Zethu Matebeni. Sorry, Tebogo. I'm looking at him. This is Zethu Matebeni at the Jozi Book Fair. And we're talking about women and sexuality on Women's Day. Zethu, 15 years after democracy, what changes for women and democracy and women and sexuality in South Africa?
Some of the changes, I would say one has been the Constitution and our access to rights, sexual rights. And some of the changes have actually also been, I would say a risen debate and discussion around sexuality, even if it has been at a particular focusing on a particular aspects of sexuality. But coupled with those benefits have also been challenges of how to deal with sexuality in South Africa. Coming from a history where sexuality has always been, how would put it? It was always restricted. It was policed, etc. And so now comes the ability to have almost sexual freedom. We can read in our constitution about your right to be a sexual being and your right to have to claim one's sexual identity and sexual orientation. And I think this is the biggest challenge that we face as South Africans, talking about sexual rights in a space where your rights are limited, whether they are rights relating to your sexuality or, it could be rights to access to land or rights to access to jobs, etc. And so what you find is that even in a situation where you could, for example, want to claim one's right, it's always restricted because it's always you have to depend on somebody else, and also given the situation, given the fact that we live in a very patriarchal society, so you have very little negotiating power, actually, and so in one hand you have this idea and this romantic idea that you are a free being and you can access a whole lot of things under the Constitution, but actually you can't in reality. And that I think it's the same thing that we were talking about earlier, where people would say that, well, we live in a society that has the most progressive constitution, but none of these rights are accessible. They're all based on paper.
But I think we know the unequal relationship that exists, that men can have multiple partners, and it's fine. It's part of their masculinity, their prowess, their eligibility. The same doesn't hold for women. And then, of course, we have Jacob Zuma, who is a public polygamist. And I welcome the fact that he brought all three wives to the inauguration. But how has that impacted on ordinary working women, black women?
Yeah. Sure, that's a very provocative question, Maria, and I will not attempt to answer it. But I will definitely put it out there as a challenge, and put the challenge to all of us. Like if we could ever imagine a society where women can claim their right to sexuality as much as men, and then we have to imagine what that would do to our society. As provocative as your statement is, the question is about our president and his three wives. I would like to imagine a society where we could see a female president walking with her wives, all three of them. And let's see what that's going to do to our society. I think it's about time. It's really about time. And we're saying that we have a constitution that allows for things like that. And let's take it to the test and let's see what that will do. It's difficult to decide or to pinpoint exactly what polygamy does to society, because there are lots of women who argue for it. All right, I'm not in a position to argue for or against it. But I would argue against any system that basically takes away the rights of a woman. from being a full citizen. Whether polygamy does that or not, that's still for us to discuss. But definitely patriarchy is one of the very difficult systems that we will continue to challenge in this society.
Also, how do we balance people's right to culture and what that does in terms of the rights of an individual? And I'm thinking particularly if you think of girl children and the fact that they're subjected to things like virginity testing, right? On the other hand, young girls, in terms of the legislation, the fact that children, young girls at the age of 12, without the consent of their parents, can go and have a safe abortion. So I think this is some of the contradictions of this new, of the new democracy. But how do we then, move forward in terms of resistance, in terms of building movements that take into account the diversity of women from a young age, but that can give them that space to develop, to tolerance, to, that what our diversity is our strength as opposed to our weakness.
You start your question by asking around social movements, and I'll talk from my own personal experience, having been part of the gay and lesbian movement. And a lot of people think that it has been a movement that has managed to challenge quite a lot of these things, challenging patriarchy, challenging heterosexuality. Looking, for example, at how we've managed to ensure that same-sex couples can get married, that their partners can be taken care of by the state when the one partner is deceased or for other benefits, etc. But of course, there have been limits to that in the sense that people who want to claim their sexuality do not have that space outside the gay and lesbian movement. Or they can't do it within the gay and lesbian movement because they don't identify as gay or lesbian. But outside, there isn't that kind of space that challenges some of these systems, even though they themselves would like to challenge. So, for me, what would be important would be to find commonalities within trying to fight particular systems, whether it be patriarchy or heterosexuality, or homophobia, because, for example, if you limit all these fights to particular identities but in identity politics, you're basically excluding a lot of other people. So, for example, the fight against homosexuality is not a fight for the homosexuals. It's a fight for everybody who is against against the right for people not to love each other. People. Oh, okay. I need to rephrase that. It's a fight against fighting those who do not want those to love each other freely to do that openly, and that would be basically a struggle that everybody fights, and not a struggle for the homosexuals only. And it's the same thing with. I would say it's the same thing with many other rights, sexual exploration. We're all sexual beings, and whether we want to start exploring at an early age or when we are in our 50s, we should have that right, and we should be part of that fight.